So it looks like we have Brandon Dollaway on the right-hand side playing Shadow. Brandon He on the left-hand side playing Grixis Shadow. We see from Brandon a turn 1 fetch shock combination and an Inquisition of Kozilek. And it looks like Brandon He is going to reveal a hand of triple Fatal Push, 1 Teamer Battle Rage,
okay, buddy.
1 Gurmag Angler.
All right. Settle in. This is going to take a minute.
We're going to be here a minute.
Unless Brendan Dollaway plays something like Gurmag Angler here in a hurry, this game is going to be a while because Fatal Push checks Death Shadow pretty well. And Death Shadow is your easiest way to cobble together a fast victory. Here, Brendan Dollaway is going to take the unique card in Teamer Battle Rage because he knows he's going to have to grind through all of those Fatal Pushes eventually. His goal for the rest of the game is going to be to wear down the resources of Brandon He and hopefully stick something like Gurmag Angler, which goes over the top of those Fatal Pushes.
Right. The difference between beating 2 Fatal Pushes and beating 3 Fatal Pushes is pretty marginal for the most part.
Yeah.
It can matter, but not apt to. And here we see some more discard from Brandon Dollaway.
Yeah.
A Thoughtseize, looking at the same hand, but this time grabbing a Gurmag Angler. And in fact, that Teamer Battle Rage was replaced.
It's funny you say
same
same hand because
it was the same hand.
It's literally the same hand minus the land.
Right.
Because the Teamer Battle Rage replaced itself. Thoughtseize is significantly powerful in this matchup because specifically it takes those big Delph threats. And a lot of these players in these builds are moving away from things like Terminate and really relying on Fatal Push and Lightning Bolt to do a lot of the heavy lifting as their removal. Brandon, he actually does have access to 2 copies of Dismember main deck. Let's take a look over at Brandon Dollaway's and see how many he has.
Also 2 copies of Dismember.
Okay, so both
these players have
coming
very
prepared
similar
for the
deck
mirror.
lists.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's that one stubborn denial difference.
So play goes back to Brandon He. He's looking at options here. Looks like we have played a fetch land.
I think the trick in these Grixis Shadow mirrors is being proactive with your disruption, proactive with basically all of your plays as much as possible. You see Brendan, he's sitting back on a bunch of Fatal Pushes, doesn't really have anything to do, no discard. You know, he's basically solidified himself from losing to an early Death Shadow pretty well. Unfortunately for him, if Brandon Dollaway just casts a Gurmag Angler here, this game could be over in just a few attacks.
Yeah, Brandon, he's going to be drawing really thin in that situation. We haven't seen one yet. Here's a Snapcaster.
Love it.
Yeah, I think we're just playing the attrition game now. Gonna re-up with the Serum Visions. Take a look at the top 2. Send them to the bottom. Not interested. One of them was a copy of Stubborn Denial.
Right.
Not going to be drawing that anymore, so Todd may have to change his opinion on who the victor will be.
Look, that's fine. I mean, he put it on the bottom. Clearly, it's not good in this scenario.
Oh, I agree.
Okay?
I agree entirely. And Brandon with a draw there. It looked like a Death Shadow to me.
It does look like a Death Shadow to me as well. Fetch line here is going to put him to 14. Another Fetch Shock could put him potentially to 11 and allow him to cast that Death Shadow as a 2-2. That does leave it vulnerable to both Lightning Bolt as well as Fatal Push. So we'll see what his plan is here, and if he actually does want to run out this Death Shadow here, even if it's potentially vulnerable to those removal spells.
Only 1 Lightning Bolt in Brandon Dollaway's list. Interesting how that number has changed over time.
Well, before Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt was a 4-of. It was a very easy 4-of because it was basically your only option at 1 mana to deal with creatures.
Right.
The mirror match was pretty rough because Bolt doesn't kill anything, and Death Shadow got out of hand pretty regularly, and Terminate was a huge deal.
For sure.
Now, all that's basically changed. Fatal Push kind of throws that on his head. Death Shadow's not the it card in the mirror match anymore, and it's all about Gurmag Angler and those big sideboard threats like Liliana of the Veil and Liliana of the Last Hope.
And there you see the Fatal Push from Brandon Dollaway, removing Death Shadow from the table. Going to follow up with a Mishra's Bauble. Take a look at the top card. Going to draw a card in the next upkeep. Appears we may not be interested in that top card. No, he actually is. He's going to Thought Scour his opponent instead and draw the card off the top. It is the Gurmag Angler, the card we've been waiting for. Going to head to the battlefield.
Real big fish.
Yep, and that may end this game very quickly if Brendan he is not able to find an answer.
Yeah, and at 12 life already, could be just as easy as Teamer Battle Rage plus Lightning Bolt to seal the deal next turn. And we know that Brandon still has 2 copies of Fatal Push rotting in hand as well as a Teamer Battle Rage, just not the right pieces to solving this puzzle.
Brandon picked up an Inquisition, was able to take away the Snapcaster Mage from Brandon Dollaway's hand. Brandon's going to go ahead, untap, take a draw. Swing in with the big fish.
Sound effects.
Down to 7 for Brandon He. Follow-up is going to be Thought Scour. 2 enter the bin, 1 off the top.
Now, interesting enough, Stubborn Now would actually be pretty good here. There aren't very many ways for Brandon to actually take care of this Gurmag Angler, and Stubborn Now colds half of them.
Right.
Of course, Dismember being the one it does stop, where an opposing Gurmag Angler doesn't really do it.
Brandon had a follow-up, Faithless Looting there. Digs a little bit deeper into the deck, passes back to Brandon He. Definitely on the back foot right now. I think I saw a Faithless Looting in hand. Or maybe that was the Teamer Battle Rage. Yeah, it's got to be because he passes back. Now at a very vulnerable 7 life.
Yeah, a Bobble going to take a peek.
Here's an attack. Brandon falling to 2. Teamer Battle Rage. That is going to do it for Dollaway. Takes the match up, or excuse me, takes the game up 1-0. Going to bring us to sideboards for these 2 Grixis Shadow decks as both players look to improve in the mirror. Why don't we go ahead and start on Brandon He's side. Over there we're looking at 1 Abrade, 1 Fatal Push, 1 Liliana of the Last Hope, 2 Collective Brutality, 1 Stubborn Denial, 1 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Liliana of the Veil, 1 Snapcaster Mage. I think we're also missing from that list maybe 1 Liliana. No, there's the Liliana of Last Hope.
3 copies of Surgical Extraction are missing from the list. We'll get that fixed for you in just a second. I believe there is also an Errant Lightning Bolt hanging out in Brandon Heath's sideboard. We'll get that, anyway, let's go ahead and talk about what's coming in because Surgical Extraction is definitely not. Lightning Bolt, definitely not. These are not cards that matter too much. Not a big deal. The cards that I'm interested in, the Grinders. 2 Liliana of the Veil, very strong. 1 Liliana Last Hope, a shoe-in, especially alongside that extra Snapcaster Mage, to give you a bit of longevity as the game goes long. Each player is just going to be ripping each other's hand apart with discard effects, removal spells. They're going to want to side out things like Teamer Battle Rage and Stubborn Denial, these like combo-y type things and reactive type things. They're kind of evening out their overall power level as far as their spell base is concerned. You want all your draws to basically look the same, and you want a few heavy hitters off the top of the deck as the game goes long, and all the Lilianas do just that.
Let's go over to Brandon Dollaway's side. Few small differences here, but I want to discuss them. We have 1 Abrade, 2 Collective Brutality, 1 Liliana the Last Hope, the JVP we mentioned before. Here's the difference: 2 Colligan's Command, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 3 Surgical Extractions, 2 Grim Lavamancers, and finally that 1 of Lightning Bolt floating around the sideboard. What's different on Brandon Dollaway's side here?
On Dollaway's side, he has the ability to transform into more of a spell-based control deck, but I'm not liking the lack of Liliana of the Veil. That card is going to be a huge factor here after sideboard from Brandon Heath's side. Dollaway instead opting for 2 copies of Colgan's Command, a nod to artifact-based strategies, but also very good in these super grindy matchups. Being able to return something like Gurmag Angler after it gets hit by the 1 or 2 Dismember/Terminate, or being able to take down like a Liliana of the Veil that went minus, as well as just returning Snapcaster Mage to cast it again once you hit your 5th mana. Other than that, I like the Liliana Last Hope, obviously. Everything else seems kind of meh.
Well, if you can't wait to do your thing with Grixis Death Shadow, I know just the place to do it, Todd. I'm sure you're going to be there. SCG Regionals, of course, the place to be.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yep. Season 1 Regional Championships. You can get points towards the Players' Championship. So if you're out there chasing the Players' Championship, you're definitely going to want to be at Regionals. Why don't we take a look at the locations where we can be participating in these. Head out to Chicago, Columbus, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Columbia, Durham, Dallas, Knoxville, Baltimore, Boston, Orlando, and New Jersey. All have homes for regionals for you. If you want more information, go check it out at go.starcitygames.com/regionals.
Yeah, and if you missed those locations, they are on the website there. You can find those pretty easily. And if you want to play against your favorite names on the SCG Tour, you can bet your bottom dollar. There's going to be quite a few of them out there chasing those points in an attempt to make it to the Players' Championship. Regionals gives out a lot of points. I believe, don't get me wrong, first place is 20 points. That is roughly the equivalent of making the finals of an Open. I believe it goes 40 for an Open winner, 20 for second place, and that is a huge boost to anyone trying to make a run for the Players' Championship at the end of this year.
Right. Yep. If you're one of the best players in your region, you're looking to hit up that Players' Championship, you will be there. I am sure of it.
Yeah, me and Tom Ross used to play every regionals when we were grinding to make the Players' Championship. It's always a great tournament. The prizes are awesome. The stores that Star City Games works with to run these tournaments are trusted people and very, very happy.
So you see Dollaway start with a Thoughtseize here, untapped land via fetch. So he's already at 15 with all that life loss. An interesting distinction here you may be noticing right now. Obviously, Brandon, he lost that first game and is going second. He chose to draw. Todd, what do you think about choosing to draw in the Grixis Shadow Mirror?
He's probably smarter than I am.
I think when you're playing these attrition-based games, you're wearing down resources. I like it. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And in this particular matchup, I'll compare it to something like the Jund Mirror. There's a chance in the Jund Mirror that you have the nut draw of turn 1 discard spell, take their only removal spell, turn 2 Dark Confidant, and it runs away with the game.
Right.
That does not exist in this matchup. So in this matchup, being on the draw is effectively just giving yourself an extra card. And in a matchup that's purely about grinding resources, making sure you strip your opponent of things that are relevant, leave them with really reactive stuff, maybe answers that don't quite answer what threat you're presenting. It could be really tough sledding, and that extra card could be the difference.
Yeah, I mean, everything in the deck is a 1-for-1. So you get one extra card, and then you can break parity. Obviously, post-board, things change a little bit. Liliana the Veil has opportunity to deal with multiple cards. Also something like Colligan's Command, but these effects are far and few between. Snapcaster Mage, another one. But ultimately, you're still just trading a lot of resources on a 1-for-1 basis.
Right.
And I think that shows just Brandon he's been around the block a few times. He knows this matchup.
Well, both Brandons have definitely played this matchup quite a bit. I know for a fact Brandon Dollaway, a Grixis Shadow connoisseur, plays it even when it's bad, which is usually.
Yeah, it's been thin times for Grixis Shadow recently. Certainly not at its apex. It had a period where people were talking Death Shadow bans if you go back only about a year or so.
Yep.
Things have definitely changed for this archetype.
I definitely agree. I think that the Grixis Shadow archetype in general is one that is really, really powerful. And given the right set of circumstances, wow. Stubborn Denial still in the deck, taking out that Liliana the Last Hope.
Pretty good there, Todd. I don't know.
It's not bad.
Just talking about Brandon, he being Grixis Death Shadow Master, he loves the Stubborn Denial post board. He nails a Liliana of the Last Hope. Man, was that a backbreaking play.
Like I said, he chose to draw Captain Stubborn Denial. He's probably smarter than me, and that's fine. I am a man who is fine admitting when he is wrong. But if it was Gurmag Angler, he'd be in a lot of trouble. Okay?
That is unquestionable. Unquestionable. The draw lines up well, though, for Brandon He, and he's going to try and use that Stubborn Denial, start wrestling control of this game.
If he has another fetch line here, he can get a Death Shadow online if he has access to one, knocking himself down to 11.
That does look like another fetch land. Going to go ahead and crack. Let's see what the fetch is.
I know that Brandon still has access to multiple copies of Fatal Push in hand. Seems to really like drawing that card in this matchup, and it hasn't done a whole lot for him yet.
Yeah, unfortunately not lining up particularly well thus far. You really only need that one Fatal Push to come through for me, though. Deal with that one lethal Death Shadow, and then you get paid.
The problem with that is if you only have the one, there's a very good chance your opponent takes it from you before casting the Death Shadow. I think that drawing 2 is usually the right number. Drawing 3 usually means one of them is going to be dead, or your opponent is just going to hold all their Death Shadows until they draw enough discard spells to strip you of all of those potential removal spells.
And here you see Snapcaster Mage bringing back the discard spell, taking Colligan's Command. Brandon He trying to restrict Brandon Dollaway's access to those long, grindy games we've been talking about.
Yeah, and Dollaway actually drew 2 of his killer sideboard cards here in Liliana the Last Hope, as well as Colligan's Command. But unfortunately for him, timely Stubborn Denial and a Snapcaster on a Inquisition of Kozilek means that Brandon is back to playing this 1-for-1 game.
There's that first Fatal Push, going to take out the Snapcaster Mage. Brandon takes a draw, passes back to Brandon He.
Yeah, and Stubborn Denial, look, the draw for the turn on Brandon Dollaway's side. So both players definitely disagreeing with me, both leaving in Stubborn Denial and using that to keep those Planeswalkers in check. Once one of them gets a Stubborn Denial online with something like Gurmag Angler, that's going to be the point where it really starts to shine. When you're ahead, Stubborn Denial is very good, and occasionally you can snipe one of those 3-mana Planeswalkers. But the times where you're behind, Stubborn Denial is the worst draw in the deck.
Unquestionably. It does seem like both these players, though, think it's important to find that way to get ahead and then leverage Stubborn Denial.
Right.
Here we see a Faithless Looting from Brandon He. Going to take a look. Discard 2 eventually. You see a Thoughtseize off the top. See what he's going to keep here.
Yeah, Faithless Looting was the more important innovation for this Grixis Shadow deck from Ben Freeman last year, where he ultimately decided, well, we can build this deck to operate on 2 or 3 lands. Every game, we can operate on just 2 or 3 lands, whereas previous iterations sometimes couldn't get online until they hit 5. Whenever you could Snapcaster Mage a Kolaghan's command, that's when your deck started churning. However, with Faithless Looting, pitching your excess lands after you hit your 3rd land drop means that you just get more raw spells, and that effectively adds up to more card economy than if you drew 5 lands and started chaining Kolaghan's command with Snapcaster Mage.
See a cycle of a Street Wraith here from Brandon Dollaway. Life total is getting precariously low, but that's just how this matchup is played.
No one has dealt the other a damage.
Yep.
One person's dealt himself 15, the other's dealt himself 13.
I think a Snapcaster Mage did 2 damage to Brandon
Dollaway.
Dollaway.
No, it got hit with a Fatal Push.
He cast it end of turn.
Fine.
That is the only damage that has happened.
He
via
chose to let that damage happen to him.
He did. That is accurate.
Both players here digging furiously, looking for that Gurmag Angler. That creature is the one that survives Fatal Push.
Bit of a staring match right now. Neither player really asserting themselves onto the battlefield in any way. Why don't we check in with these other matches? We see Griffin Van de Veen with 4-color Loam up a game against Timothy Schulz on lands, and Thomas San Miguel up a game on Aiden Brier, that in the Esper Control versus Sultai midrange matchup.
So to help y'all home with these deck naming conventions, 4-color Loam is generally the version of the deck that relies on Chalice of the Void to lock your opponents out. Usually you have something like Knight of the Reliquary, sometimes Living Wish or Countryside Crusher. You know, these weird 3-drops that are really powerful with land synergies. The lands deck, of course, usually uses Destiny Sage Dark Depths with Punishing Fire as its primary win condition, but is way more reliant on things like Gamble and usually has a larger density of lands.
Yeah, great explanation, Todd. Thanks for pointing that out. Here we see Brandon Heed resolving a flashback Faithless Looting. Still digging for action. I still don't see any, though. It's all reactive spells, Thoughtseizes, Stubborn Denials. See Thought Scours, but nothing really getting onto the battlefield.
It's a slug, but it looks like both of them have a Stubborn Denial in hand. Both of them just want to find.
Just looking for that first Gurmag Angler. Yeah. It's worth noting, too, Brandon sitting at 6 life. Oh, excuse me, let me clarify. Brandon Hay sitting at 6 life. Brandon Dollaway sitting at 5 life. When we're playing a game all about Gurmag Angler, that's a really big distinction.
Oh, I completely agree. And both players here are getting dangerously low, so it means something like Street Wraith drawn, not really in the business of cycling. At a point, an errant Snapcaster Mage can steal the game. You have to be pretty careful here.
Yeah, getting to the point where you want to think about finding a way to cast that creature as opposed to cycling it. On Brandon Heath's side, we're up to 4 lands, so not that far off, really.
I mean, in Legacy, we saw Street Wraith in the hands of Josh Utterlayton be very good when combined with Reanimate in his Legacy version of Death Shadow.
Yeah.
I myself have cast quite a few Street Wraiths in Death Shadow matchups before.
All right, Todd. There's the threat. There's the Gurmag Angler. There's also a Death Shadow in hand. Brandon, he's going for it in one fell swoop. He's going to get on board and look to end this game in 1 turn exactly.
Yeah, and if he has a land and a Snapcaster Mage, he can actually go Stubborn Denial plus Snap Stubborn. But his hand is 3 spells, but they're 3 real good ones. Fatal Push, Death Shadow, and Stubborn Denial for the protection.
Right.
Dollaway needs a Stubborn Denial of his own to connect That's not an easy task when you don't have a Gurmag Angler on the battlefield or a Death Shadow on the battlefield.
Exactly. One Stubborn Denial is not the same as the other here. See a Mishra's Bauble cracked for Brandon He. Gonna tap a mana, play the Death Shadow. 2 lethal threats on board now. Pressure is firmly on Brandon Dollaway to find a response to these 2 creatures.
Yeah, and my guess is Brandon has Fatal Push is kind of they've been rotting in his hand forever, and if he goes for a Fatal Push on this Death Shadow, I do not expect Brandon He to fight over it. He knows that there's only a few ways for Brandon to be able to deal with Gurmag. Many of them are Gurmag itself, but the few copies of Dismember that may be hanging out in Brandon Dollaway's hand are the more important of the 2.
Absolutely. It's like Brandon Dollaway, considering his options at Brandon He's end of turn step.
Yeah, he is fingering that Dismember, trying to figure out if he wants to pay 3 mana or 2 mana for it.
Here is Fatal Push, targeting Death Shadow. Let's see Brandon He's response. Okay.
Yeah. Heads up
play.
Just a great decision from Brandon in this spot. He could get punished if Dollaway finds a Gurmag Angler off the top, but if Dollaway doesn't, this Gurmag is threatening lethal next turn.
Here we see the Dismember targeting the Gurmag Angler. Dollaway going to pay 2 life, and there is the Stubborn Denial countering Dismember. Dollaway down to 3, takes an untap, plays a land. What's the follow-up? Looks like a Snapcaster Mage targeting Dismember, falling to 1 life, but dealing with the Gurmag Angler, and we are back at parity one more time.
Yeah, Dollaway up a 2-1, but at 1 life, can't cycle Street Wraith anymore, can't fetch any lands, dead to any damage from Brandon He that he could produce.
Right, and Brandon does have the Fatal Push in hand, ready to deal with that Snapcaster Mage.
It looks like he drew another Gurmag Angler. And if he finds a bolt off the top, he could win right now.
Serum Visions.
Ooh, this is spicy.
Snapcaster Mage, Death Shadow.
And a Death Shadow. Oh, he bottomed one.
Which
Holy
one do
moly.
you think he bottomed
I
there?
think he bottomed the Death Shadow.
Maybe. Here we have the Gurmag Angler. I mean, pressure's firmly back on Brandon Dollaway now. Has to find an answer.
Yeah, and, that Snapcaster Mage and those Dismembers put him all the way down to
whoa! A second Gurmag Angler.
Big fish, baby. Let's go!
Yeah, that's enough for Brandon Dollaway. He's seen it all. He's picking him up, not beating that. Oh, that was a tight Grixis Death Shadow game. Todd, that was a good game of Magic. You naysayed the Grixis Shadow matchup. Look, you're trembling right now.
Oh, I'm having flashbacks. I remember losing in the top 4 of the Invitational to old Tyron2. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It's at Tyron2 on Twitter.
Oh, Daniel Fournier.
There it is.
Yep.
The Canadian. Not that's his nickname. It's not his nickname. He's just Canadian.
What do you think about sideboards now? I mean, we saw the Stubborn Denials actually be pretty important in that game. Do you want to reevaluate where you stood? Or are you just saying, let the Brandons do what they want. They've got this figured out?
You know what? It's been a while since I've played Grixis Death Shadow. Personally, I have very little experience with the Mishra's Bauble versions and the Faithless Lootings and such. I am a traditionalist. I like my Snapcaster Mages and my Kolaghan's commands and my Terminates. I like hitting my land drops. So I'm just going to let them do their thing. They both had Stubborn Denial. It looked pretty good. It saved Brandon He from a turn 3 Liliana the Last Hope. And it saved his Gurmag Angler from a Dismember. Forced Dollaway to snap Dismember later on, putting himself to a precarious 1 life, and ultimately took the game in favor of Brandon He.
It's this weird tension where, like, it's not good against a vast majority of the cards, but the thing the matchup often comes down to, it's very much vulnerable to Stubborn Denial, protecting a Gurmag Angler. Like, that's what this game is about. And Stubborn Denial checks that box for sure.
Right, and you saw the majority of that game, neither player really going past 3 mana for quite a long time, using things like Faithless Looting to discard those excess lands. So the front half of Stubborn Denial, just countering a non-creature spell unless they pay 1, was potent for the majority of that game. And so, and back when I played a lot with the deck, Stubborn Denial was a little weaker because the games would go longer. You would hit your 5th, 6th, 7th land drop sometimes and have these big flurry turns with Snapcaster, Kolaghan's, untap, play Liliana of the Veil or whatever. And those games, you usually would invalidate Stubborn Denial over time.
Right. Yeah, it seems like things have changed as the Grixis Shadow Mirror has evolved here.
I am old, yes.
Oh,
you are right.
we all are, Todd. We're all old. So you do see Griffin Van de Veen has taken the Legacy match 2-0, playing 4-color Loam against Timothy Schultz's lands. So this is a very, very important match here. Brandon, he has the opportunity to clinch the entirety of the match for his team with a victory over Brandon Dollaway. Let's see if Brandon Dollaway chooses to take the draw now that he has the option. Does he think Brandon he was on to something?
That's always the question. Whenever my opponent chooses to take the draw, you know, that's a bold decision. You don't see a lot. And I generally lean toward they're probably right.
I think I read his lips, and I think he said, I'm going to draw. Yep, there we go. Brandon He on the play.
Do we have him in the feature match area or no?
We're going to start with a Mishra's Bauble as well as a Street Wraith Cycled.
Okay, get Augustus to go ask him. If you could, please. Sorry. Never mind. We'll just run this one.
Continuing to develop early resources, we have a fetch land.
So a lot can go on here. The using the Mishra's Bauble alongside fetch lands, giving yourself a little bit of that card selection, even though it's at the cost of playing a few wonky cards. You know, like Mishra's Bauble doesn't really work alongside Snapcaster Mage, but it functions as a way to lower your overall land count, and that's definitely something this deck wants to do.
And we have Inquisition of Kozilek as the play for Brandon He. As we saw in the first game, very important to, 1, know what your opponent's working with, 2, be able to manage that and mitigate it and plan around it. And Inquisition of Kozilek checks all those boxes.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of all the discard spells in this matchup. The games usually go pretty long, and there are some key pieces that you need to take early, as well as making sure you can potentially strip your opponent of things like Death Shadows or Fatal Pushes to protect your own Death Shadow, or just taking those key 3-mana sideboard cards like Kolaghan's Command and the Lilianas. Let's see if Brandon remembers that bobble trigger.
Fingers crossed.
I've missed quite a few.
It does feel like it happened a while ago, doesn't it? Like sometimes you have those very latent bobble triggers where you've done a bunch of other things on the turn and you want to check and see if your opponent. Brandon, he has no such problems. He's a master, knows the Death Shadow deck in and out, picks up his card.
Yeah, the reason we're watching this match, Nick Miller believes that both of these players are peak Death Shadow guys.
I now believe Nick Miller.
I also
from what
believe
I've
Nick
seen,
Miller.
This has been very impressive play thus far.
So Brandon He, though, looks like he's got a handful of lands. Thoughts he's taken away that Fatal Push, and looks like he's left with nothing much to do here.
Well, this deck can get very explosive off the top. Anytime you're playing a Snapcaster Mage deck, you have the capability to just kind of generate resources out of nowhere. So far from over here. Going to have a lot more turns of development from both these Brandons.
Yeah, Dollaway here firmly in the driver's seat with just more total spells. A lot of times the difference in this matchup is one drawn spell more than the opponent. And with Brandon He on a handful of lands, he definitely needs to find a Faithless Looting to get the ball rolling here, or else it's not gonna be pretty.
Yeah, this is a matchup which will definitely show the value of Faithless Looting.
Yeah, the Serum Vision Scry here, fairly important. Both cards on top are spells. Looks like Faithless Looting as well as a Fatal Push. Dollaway going to hold on to that push to make sure that an errant Death Shadow from Brandon's side doesn't come down and steal the game out from under him. Woo, baby! That's one way to get back in this game.
Big draw off the top. Liliana of the Veil going to tap, search. I think we're going to find the untapped Shock Land and put Liliana onto the board.
Yeah, and this is a way to turn those extra lands effectively into spells. This tick up here is going to allow Brandon He effectively to trade a land in hand for a spell from Brendan Dollaway's side.
It actually sounds like from our feature match area, we want to make sure we bring you the conclusion of every single match. And it sounds like we may have a determining winner over in our Esper Control versus Sultai mid-range match. We are going to switch over to that. We want everyone to know how matches end, and it sounds like this may come to a conclusion regardless of the outcome of that Grixis Death Shadow mirror.
All right, looks like we got Teferi on the battlefield. 7 loyalty counters. I believe that is a Hydroid Crassus with 7 counters on it, stolen from a Thief of Sanity.
Yep, that sounds right.
And a Carnage Tyrant, the lone creature on the Sultai mid-range side.
Going to go after the Teferi. It's not often that you don't care about a Carnage Tyrant on your opponent's side of the board, but I think that's exactly the position we see the Esper Control player, Thomas San Miguel, in here. With the large flyer, may be able to end this game very, very quickly. Let's see what Aiden Brier has as a response here.
Yeah, and it looks like Miguel actually has a ton of cards in hand, just been riding this Thief of Sanity for multiple turns here, and this big Hydroid Crassus that he has stolen off that Thief of Sanity gives him the power he needs to take this game in just a few short turns. With a handful of cards, you have to imagine some of them are absorb, some of them are removal spells.
Oh, yeah.
And a pair of
Just Ladder Elves, not great on this stage of the game.
No, sirree.
Todd, you know what's better than casting your own Hydroid Crassus?
Casting your opponent's Hydroid Crassus. You know what's better than casting your opponent's Hydroid Crassus?
What?
Stealing it with a Melody. And Transing Melody, I just have to assume is going to see a large uptick in popularity over the next few weeks. It's so good against Hydroid Crassus. And
yes, it is.
I think Hydroid Crassus is very wisely one of the best cards in the format right now.
See, life total is very one-sided here. The Esper Control player sitting at 26, while our Sultai mid-range player, Aiden Brier, sitting at 14. I think we have now flipped a second search for Azcanta. I do see a flipped land over in Thomas's mana base. Maybe that one has not flipped yet.
It doesn't. It's a May on the transform, so
right,
he gets this basically a scry engine every turn.
Yep.
But look, he has another engine going too, an engine called Thief of Sanity.
The beatdown engine.
It looks like he found another Thief of Sanity.
Why not?
It's insanity.
Take all the cards. That's
the
current plan for Thomas. He's going to take all of Aiden's cards and beat him to death with them.
Yeah, this is not great, Jim.
Nope. And there we see Teferi. Well, that's a pretty good card.
You know, it's not even the 3rd best card on the battlefield right now.
That may be true, which is not something you often say about Teferi.
All right, so he's looking to. That better not be a Kai's Wrath. Okay, no, it's a Thought Erasure promo.
Taking a Hydroid Crassus would have been a fine play. Still probably not all that meaningful, but, you know, got to cross your T's, dot your I's in these situations. There you see the 2 lands untapping from Teferi. I do think I also saw an Absorb in Thomas's hand. So this one is well and truly in control. And there you see the hand extended. Thomas San Miguel wins the match for his team. 2 matches, 2-0.
Yeah, and of course we would very much love to watch the conclusion of that Grixis Shadow mirror match between